Every damn day, every damn day. I've been seeing these shirts. They're probably not new. I just noticed them recently, where it says "every damn day" on it. I think it's a Nike slogan. So I do something every damn day, but I don't like walk around with a T-shirt that says "every damn day" on it. I make progress every day, and if you look, let me see if I can align it correctly with my eyes. Where I'm looking, this is a little trick here. No. Where I'm looking, okay, where I'm pointing, that's my little counter that says this is the number of days in a row where I spent some time on this game, working on it, adding to it. Up to 65 now, which is pretty solid, and it's a habit now. I might have some other shit I gotta do on that day. I still find time. So I've written code at airports. I've written code before going to literally a memorial service, or basically a funeral. Every day. Every damn day. Progress every damn day. I could add an extra D there. Anyways, this is about my game, The God Killer. My name is Eric, making progress on it every damn day. And I will give you a little demo of it, and then I'll start working. Weekly schedule. I do this kind of thing that you're listening to right now in the evenings, Monday through Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time ish, about. Sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later. Sunday, 3 p.m. on the dot most of the time, Pacific Standard Time. I do God Killer Gamedev Sundays, which is more about the game, but it will be a non-programming set of tasks I take on. I'm going to do a voiceover session on this Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, and cheating a little bit. I know I just announced what that session's for, but it's for a different game that I was involved with called Drod. I'm going to record some voiceover lines for a contest related to that game, and I'm looking forward to that. There's this character that I voiced in that game. It had a voice kind of like welcome to the chat room. No, I gotta listen to it and regain that voice. Actually, it's like it's a very jolly voice. You jolly. You got big slapping Richard Nixon jowls, and you just it's just I gotta get back into it. Ridiculous character, and I'm gonna do like a live voiceover session, record a whole bunch of lines with it. This 3 p.m. and if after I get done with that, I'll probably go back to regular God Killer type tasks. Okay, so let's do a demo. I always start these things off with a demo. So if you just want to get a quick idea of where the game is at, you can see this. And the previous session, I did a very lengthy explanation of the game mechanics. This one I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do a quick little jaunt around the level that I built yesterday. I did work on these panels and getting them to fill in with different criteria supplied to the procedural generation. And I'll give a quick demo of that. I continue to be plagued with warning messages from Unity. They're basically telling me the things you're trying to do inside of the validate command are inappropriate, sir. They're inappropriate, and your days are numbered, or something. It feels very ominous. I'm seeing lots of little side effects I don't like, and I have to restart the scene, load in the scene again to get past different problems. So I'm going to do it not on stream time, but kind of on one of my non-streaming days. I'm going to go through and fix up all those little editor messages with some new approach. I might have to do some research on it to see what the deal is. And research tends to make a really kind of dreary stream. Like I'm so worried about entertaining everybody, and like that nobody's actually paying any attention to the streams. I should not worry, but I do kind of because I know I'm capable of making an entertaining stream. I don't have an audience now, but I still have some confidence that I can do it. I have not cracked Twitch. I don't really understand like what makes people come and watch it. I don't. But it offends my pride a tiny bit that I'm not getting a proper audience at this point. But I'm not really that serious about the audience either. The serious thing I'm doing is making this game. But I haven't like given up on trying on that part of it. I mean, I'll keep on doing the stream because there's benefits to me. It's sort of like a motivating activity. I seem to enjoy talking to nobody. There's a thing in programming called talking to a rubber duck, which is where the act of explaining what you're doing to nobody at all clarifies your thoughts. I think that has happened a number of times. If nothing else, there's some practice with presenting this game that will be valuable for a later stage when I'm trying to promote it a bit. And then I suppose there's some tiny chance that I may be able to pick up an audience through Twitch. And okay, so I'll keep on doing the streams. That's the end of that story for now, for the indefinite period. Okay, so there's wall paneling all over the place. It's procedurally generated. Today I'm going to refine another piece of procedural generation, which are the cables. I'm going to draw out some of those so you can see what they are. I guess technically I'll still be in demo land here. Let me unplay. This is all in Unity, if you're not familiar with the tool. So I've got, see all these error messages here? That's telling me I'm not doing something right. And I'm telling you because I already looked at those messages that the answer to the problem is not that straightforward. Easy error messages, I go and fix them right away. Ones that make no sense to me, ones that on my first lookup on the internet don't show up anything useful, those ones tends to take me a little bit longer to get to them and fix them. And that's the case with those, but I will figure something out there. Because I know that like when I'm using other things like Pro Builder that do a lot of the same things I do, they don't have the problems that I'm having. So it is possible to get past them. Okay, so prefabs, cables. So let's drag a cable out so you can see what it is. Did I stick it way out here? Maybe I did. Okay. Alright, so a cable is just two endpoints, start and end, and the magic is that all the points in between are calculated on the fly. Not on the fly, they're calculated after each movement within the editor, which is where I'm at right now. So I can drag one of these points to one location and it will let me see if I can get the snap to work too. Snap is extra cool to me anyways. Let's see, do I have snaps just on corners? I think I have them on rails. I'll pull one up to the rail. Got these things called cable sockets. The trick is in 3 dimensions getting it so it's actually close enough to snap. Once it snaps, it's usually, yeah, there's the snap. Okay. So there's this thing called a cable socket which is built into the rail there, and when I move one of the endpoints close to it, it just snaps to it. And that was something I made. All this is code I made. Pretty proud of it. Let me drag the other end to a different rail and snap that in place. I think I failed to snap there. That would be a nice thing to have haptic feedback for. Okay, you snapping? You snapping? Drag you there. Let's get the y-axis correct. Oh, it's already snapped. That's why. Okay. Alright, so that's snapped. So the next thing I want to do, I'll make the radius of this bigger so that it's easy to see. That's like ridiculously wide, but I can see it quite clearly. The next thing I want to do is something where cables can be formed right in the middle part. Like, okay, so I've got this drooping curve between the both ends. Let me make the slack height a little bit more. Okay. And I would like to have even like another drooping part underneath. Alright, that's just, the radius is just crazy big. Let me shrink it down a tiny bit. So then, if I just do it by hand, I can show you the effect. And I can test out the effect for myself. So I took a copy of that cable and I put it underneath the first one. And the idea is, at certain points in the first cable, there'd be these extra droopy parts that come down. Why would I do that? Aesthetics. I think it's going to look cool. I made drawings that looked neat to me when I made it that way. Now with these giant bulky radius cables, it doesn't look that good. It looks kind of weird. So let me set the radius back down. So this one here, you can see it's kind of chunky. I find that like when there's a curve that is more pronounced, that it needs smaller segments in it. Okay, so set the radius down. Let's just go back to that first radius. So you have to kind of imagine like a whole ton of these things all over the place. Yeah, I don't think that's going to look good unless it's at smaller radius. So let's go down to there. Okay. And this is a good candidate to be done programmatically, because aligning these 2 points so they match up exactly is just a pain. Whereas the code that generates the first curve, it knows the XYZ of every single point on this curve. So it's much easier for it to add these extra curves below. So let me decorate it just a little bit more. So I add like a little middle part here, and maybe the one above it I'll decorate as well. Okay, so that's what one of these cables looks like. Now you have to imagine just a ton of them all over the place and the effect that would have. So it already looks more interesting to me than the first cable by itself. Let me just add a few more because I'm testing the look of this thing out right now because it's going to suggest certain goals to me in coding. So let's just move another one in here. So there's questions in my mind like, do I want to allow this kind of thing where the endpoint of one, I'll call these subloops. I'll call them subloops, where one of these subloops overlaps the area of another one. I think it looks fine. I don't think there's any issue with that. Alright, let's see what it looks like in the game. Subloops is what I shall call them. I've got so many brawlers, that's these enemies here, put on this level that it's actually a little bit tough to get over to any place I want to be in the level. And I have so many because I was testing the bounds of good taste as far as adding lots of enemies to a level. It seems to me that it gets pretty hard with the density I've got here. And I could add more. After a while it does become not fun. This is pretty challenging. Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit of a look at my cable. And I like it. I like it. So a few things to note. When it gets closer to me, when it gets very close to me on purpose, it's blurry, and that's working right. There's a depth of field post-processing effect where at this, I'm pointing in 3 space I guess, at the y-axis point close to the character where she is now, it's crisp, and very much closer it gets blurry, or further away it gets blurry again. So like you see far below the ground, that could be like multiple meters, kilometers down there, that is blurry because of the depth of field post-processing effect. So that's working pretty well here with the cables. I don't mind seeing a cable kind of like up close to me like this. So that's good. The connection point here is off, and my procedural generation would fix that kind of problem. So it's, if anything, that's a justification for me to do that effect procedurally. Trying to push my way through these guys so I can come over and look at the cable from a different angle. It's a little further off to my right. That looks cool. I'll lead this guy that's following me into the spikes. So just get rid of him. I didn't really get rid of him though. He just went back up to the spawn point. Okay, now I'm going to go see what the cables look like when you're sort of up above them. Noting the segment size there is pretty rough. Well, like if you look at the curve here, right there, it gets a little bit like it's made out of those fiberglass tent poles. Yeah, so the mesh isn't detailed enough there. If I was really optimizing that mesh generation, I would make the mesh segments smaller if the angle that the curve was curving at was tighter. So I don't need as many polygons on the long, straighter stretches. It's just right where it curves more. But I don't have any evidence I should optimize that right now, so I'm not going to do anything with that. I'll just change the setting as needed to make that curve more smooth, even if I waste some polys on the straight parts. Okay, so I like that effect. It looks good, like I thought it would when I was sketching out little drawings of it earlier on an airplane, and I think I should implement it. So let's work on that next. So a good way to do it could be some different settings that go into this, like so now I'm in the class that implements the properties that are inspected in the cable. So for subloops, I think maybe subloop count. So I can say let's see. Let me leave that for now. I have a qualm about it, but I can come back to it. Subloop size. I think you can do it as a percent. I think as a percent is the right way to do it. Subloop chance 0 to 100%. So here's my thinking. Say that I specified for this cable that it would have 4 subloops. So it kind of makes like a like 4 slots where a subloop could be. So I'll go ahead and I'll make this kind of representative of my scenario. So here, subloop 1 starts here. I can say each one of them takes 30% of the total length. So that would allow an overlap type of effect. And then I could say there's a fill chance of 50%, meaning, or a subloop chance of 50%, meaning that, say, you had a coin toss and you flipped it here, heads, okay, there will be a subloop here, flip it again, heads, okay, another subloop there, and then the remaining 2 slots came up tails, no subloop. So you get kind of a nice randomization within the parameters. That would be pretty good. That would allow for quite a range. Another thing, is the slack amount of each loop. You could set a slack amount. So, you know, so like for example, here on both of these subloops, slack height is 3.3, but I could have set it in my overall setting to 1, and then they'd be tight. They would be tight. Or more tight, at least. If I wanted them super tight, all the way tight, I just go like that, and they actually can, in that case, they can show above the loop. That doesn't seem quite right. Visually, that doesn't seem quite right. It feels like maybe, yeah, it's not worth it though. It's not worth the time that it would take to calculate an actual minimum slack height. It's easier to just adjust it. So let's see. Go slack height of 0.5. Right. So that brings up another thing, that a lot of these settings, it might be nice to have like a random variation applied to them. Subloop, slack height. So if I set this down to 0, that's not really useful. Let's have the subloop count be 0 to n. Now I have to set some kind of actual limit, say 100. That's just a crazy number though. Let's do 40. Okay. And this will be 0 to 40f. Okay, then I'll also want random seed, because that'll let me try different variations if I don't like the first one that it comes up with. There's another type of cable I wanted to work in here too, but I'm going to leave that for another session. That was the vertical cable that would just kind of hang straight down at different points. So that's pretty good. You can also do sub loop, slack height, randomization. Let me say variation. Okay, let's say 1, 2. Yeah, let me think though. Be better if I did subloop slack min height, max height, yeah, and that might be good right there for the different kinds of tricks I want to generate with this. I mean, I can picture in my mind some other kind of nice effects to be done, but you know, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew, or I don't want to start putting every single thing that might go in there before I've had a chance to play with the first set of things a little bit. Still, I think those settings there would give me a lot of versatility. A lot. Let's also do sub loop radius. It'll just be whatever this was. I'll inherit the fidelity, so I want to specify it again. And how important is it to have decorations on the subloops too? It might be better to just keep them plain to start. All right. I'm going to rename them to curves because loops kind of sounds more general. Let me just drag all this over. So I can see it in one place. It's going to look a lot less annoying if I just do it that way. Okay, so then the range. some sensible defaults in there. What are you complaining about? Oh, missing paren. Okay. So I'm still thinking about the design. This will give me all the variables that go into generation, or at least let's copy over. Okay, so I'm going to remind myself of how this all worked. I tend to put the top level color towards the bottom. Okay, so update segment vertices. So it's going to calculate these segment vertices. Thankfully, I wrote these so they were not dependent upon the object members. They're static. So I can use this same function to calculate another set of segment vertices, create cable mesh, same deal. I can pass that in. There will need to be some other storage here. Where else is segment vertices used after this? That's one thing I wonder. Is it even necessary for me to assign it? On this draw gizmos thing, it's used there. Arguably, I could get rid of onDraw gizmos at this point. It was very useful early on when I was just sort of troubleshooting some things and getting the code up and running. But I think I could take it out now, and that would give me a major benefit. Let me make sure I'm right about this. Here, I'll just try the thing that I want to do and see what it gets complained about. Probably many things. Okay, so what is segment vertices? It is a vector 3 array, I believe. So that's pretty cool. It's like a nice thing when you don't have to rely too much on the object members to pass data around. So what I've got is one top level function that takes all those properties and passes it along, and the main cable is just locally stored here and then used to create the mesh. So because I was able to remove that reliance on an object member, class member, that's the word I should be saying, a class member, that gives me more confidence that I can reuse these two functions to do the subcurve. I just need to have some kind of logic added that will return me back vertices for subcurves as well. And then create meshes for those. The other issue that I may get, that I'm not looking forward to, is z-fighting where the meshes touch each other. Also, this is just one game object. Create cable mesh. And if I do that, okay, that is a shared thing right there. So if I do simply call this a second time, it will redefine the mesh that I previously set up inside of this function. So there is some shared data here. I was wrong with my assertion that I could just call create cable mesh again for each subcurve. What I really need to do is call calc segment vertices a number of times to get all the subcurves that are needed, and then pass segment vertices, and then for the main cable, and then also for the subcurves as well. And from that, I would create the mesh inside of here. Now I'm having like a few scared thoughts about the join points. It might be that the z-fighting won't be that bad, particularly because it would be on the underside of the cable, which is out of camera view. I can also get around a lot of the z-fighting just by making the radius of the subcurve smaller than the main curve above it. I'm just wondering, do I understand how meshes are put together well enough to do this? So with meshes, first you give it, I suppose you don't have to do it this way, but it seems like the obvious way to me. First you define your vertices, all the vertices that go into the mesh, and then you create triangles that attach basically a triangular surface or polygon to the appropriate vertices. I could just kind of ignore the idea of a proper join and just make some triangles that overlap each other. That's where you get the z-fighting. Okay, but then there'd be this task of, either way, whether I figure out a good join or not, of having all the triangles get created. Then I can recalculate all the normals. That should work without anything special. This part here just it already doesn't work for me, right? It just happens that the code that I wrote made something appear that wasn't ugly, but I don't understand how it's done very well. I don't. I might just save myself some time and use kind of like a single color type of a texture there, so that it really doesn't matter. Like if I have a repeating pattern, then I'll just have all the UVs set to be a little square inside of that repeating pattern, the same one, and it won't matter if they're, the UVs won't matter that much, I guess. So I'd be willing to do that. Okay, so now I thought out loud quite a bit here. So I go back up to the top. think about my algorithm. I might as well put this closer to where the code will be. So let's go down, 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 down. This is the workhorse right here. Okay, also I should get rid of this because I just deleted it. Also, I have not done a git commit in a long time, so let's just do that real quick, since the project is basically in a good working state right now. So it's sort of like saving, or getting a checkpoint that I can come back to if I screw things up really bad. Wall panel, logical criteria. Okay, that was the last thing I did, so then let's go back here. Take out the vertices. Okay, that's gone. Okay, so my algorithm. Calc, say vertices, main curve. Okay. From that, calculate from that and public inspector properties, calculate segment vertices of all subcurves. Pass extra subcurves param to create cable mesh. There's another way I could do it. I'm going to call this number 1. So number 2 is I create some kind of structure that allows me to kind of have what's called a mesh working session. When I create it, it would get this, do this initial part here. So I'd get a mesh filter. It might be the working session I'm talking about, it's just a mesh filter. Anyways, so that struct is created, it has all this, and no, I do think it encapsulates the mesh. It also collects vertices and tries, but it does not yet set them in the mesh right away. Mesh and tries. Okay, then it's got an apply method at the end. So that mesh work object that I create, I can pass that to a function like create cable mesh, but it won't do this part at the beginning and won't do this part at the end. It'll only do the part in the middle. That would allow me to call create cable mesh multiple times without screwing anything up. Just the output of that would be new vertices and new triangles added to this mesh work object. And then when I'm all done calling create cable mesh for the main curve create cable mesh for the subcurves, I would call like some kind of apply function that sets all the vertices in the mesh filter, and it sets all the triangles, and then recalculates the normals, and it does the UVs. And I'll come up with some kind of UV methodology that doesn't need knowledge of cable vertices per ring. It'll just kind of apply like some kind of matte texture to every triangle. Not matte texture, but I'll say like a smooth texture, a non-repeating texture, something like that. Okay. So I'm liking this better because then I don't have to pass this crazy amount of parameters to create cable mesh. Let's see. The other thing I can do is I don't really need the mesh filter right away. So I can have that last apply method that gets called handle all this at one time. Getting the mesh filter, setting the vertices, setting the triangles, recalculating the normals, setting the UVs. You can make it pretty generic. So mesh work class, new mesh work class. And I can do something to make my life a little bit easier. I can add like an add quad method. It just takes some points. P1, P2, P3, P4. And it'll figure out all the vertices and triangles that need to be added. It can look for an existing point before, or existing vertex before adding it. Yeah. Okay. Let's add quad, and then add mesh to scene. I've been overusing the verb apply in other classes. So this is better. Okay, this is an editor only class. Okay. I'm pretty sure I'm going with number 2. It's a little bit silly for me to keep on editing number 1. Number 2 seems like the much better option. I don't know if I'm going to be making a lot more procedural meshes, but I do kind of like having this general purpose class I could use for it. Alright, then the last thing is call create cable mesh, passing mesh work instance, call it for all curves. That's what I'm going to do. It's not the word I want. It's technically, the texture would repeat. It's just, yeah, I can always get fancier with the UV mapping later if I want. It would be kind of nice to have like a rope texture, to be honest, but so much new stuff to add here. I just want to start getting it done, and then I think I can swing back without overall having a lot of extra work for that. So iterative development, a little bit at a time, as long as the basic plan supports more ambitious things later if I want them, then I don't have to add all that ambitious stuff in to begin with. Do I like the name of this class? Yeah, sure, why not? Mesh creator, that's better. Boom. Editor only code. I still have a feeling that as soon as I make a proper build, a lot of stuff is going to break. Because I've got game objects that have references to these scripts and they'll compile out. I don't know. I was pretty careful not to have it actually depend upon that code, but I don't know. A nice thing about editor-only code is I just don't have to worry that much about performance. As long as it's fast enough for me in the editor, that's good enough. Okay, so it's going to take... Or it's a better thing to say add to game object. More specific. Okay. And come back to here, see what I passed in over here. I think I just did. Yep. Okay. So might as well just copy some code over. Okay. here, got my vertices. I still have to write some code that properly stores them in advance, but in theory, they will all be here. No, I gotta do a 2 array. Yep, same thing here. Recalc the normals. And then this ugly business. Let me see what my other code looks like. I know it's like it's not working correctly, but I can use this as the basis of at least setting something. So I'll call this calc UVs. So I just wonder what happens if I just say that every single one of the vertices is going to be set to 0. I kind of don't get how one vertex can have a single UV point assigned to it when it's also the location of other triangles that are adjoining it. Maybe it's just that 0 is kind of like the same thing as, like 0, 0 is like the same thing as 1F, 1F, because they're just right next to each other. Just doing a little simplification. Okay. Alright. So getting down to the end of implementing this. It's fun. I like this. There's no but to that. I like this. This is good. So take a look at cable decorator, because this is working code here. This is basically what must be done to add a quad. So I can say top left die equals add unique vertex V1. I'll even make it a static because I like statics. Okay. I want these to be clockwise. I'll just add a note here. V1 through V4 are clockwise points in a quad. Okay, so going from top left die, top right. Just do this again. Bottom left eye. Let me just keep going clockwise in the assignment here. It's nice that I just know this code works already, because it was kind of painful to to figure it out the first time through. Not painful, just had trial and error. Because the order that you add them determines their normal. So if you add them, it's assumed that they're in clockwise order, which is different. Like if you're facing one direction, clockwise is basically the order that you put them in implies which direction you're looking at the item, because it's assumed that the points are given in clockwise order, and that would mean you're looking at them from one direction or another for those points to actually be clockwise. So that's how the normals are done. So I had a little bit of trial and error with that to get it right. Not too bad. Making my favorite kind of function, a static function. It's a good practice. Alright, now I may have to learn a little bit about lists. Lists. I always wonder if the muscles in my mouth are getting lazier. That's why I stopped to enunciate. Also, playing back this video, other videos I've made, annoying as fuck to hear me mumble. Hate it. Makes me want to enunciate. So that may be a benefit of the streaming for me, doing less mumbling, less sounding like I'm drunk. Alright, so let's take a look at the properties, the methods that are available for lists, the plural of list is a little hard for me to say, because there's an extra consonant there at the end. C# list. I will say, as much as I've griped at Microsoft for the crappy Visual Studio for Unity implementation, their documentation is excellent. It's really good. It's really good. Whoever did it, nice job. Whichever 40 or 50 people did it, nice job. Okay, so find. What I really want is the index. Okay, there is an index of. That's it. That's what I want. So call this vi equals vertices index of v. This will tell me if it's already there or not. So if it's -1, just return that. Return, no, if it's not equal -1, I'll just return the index of the existing. Otherwise, versus add the new vertex v, return vertices count, no, not capacity, -1, because that will be the index of a newly added element. I assume that's true. It does add them to the end, right? Yep, adds them to the end. Okay, so this may just have everything. This might be correct right away. One thing I know I can do to check it before I add in all that subcurve logic, I can just re-implement the main curve. So let's pass in something else here. Mesh creator. Mesh creator. I guess that's a ref. Kind of like to have my refs at the end of the function parameter list. I think I'm mumbling again. At the end of the function parameter list. I've got a voiceover session on Sunday, so I should practice enunciating clearly. Okay, so this stuff I don't need. This I don't need. All this code I get to pull out. It's pretty nice. So I won't need any of that. Here I would call mesh creator add quad top left eye, top right eye, gotta keep going clockwise here, bottom right eye, bottom left eye. Ow. Ow. Oh. Dang it. So I want to pass in segment vertices. Okay, I get to delete all this. I get to not care about this. And I get to delete all this. A great feeling is deleting code. And I don't need... Whew. Okay. So what does calc cable vertices need from the game object? It needs the transform, is that right? Or does it need the position? Because if it just needs the position, no, it does, it needs the transform. So let me put the game object back in. New I get to delete. Or actually, I can just put the transform in. Ah. Okay. There. Okay. Mesh creator, mesh creator, equals new, mesh creator. It's very redundant. I wish C# had a more elegant way to just instance things. This changes to pass the transform and the mesh creator. Okay. Then mesh creator. Why don't I just call it create? I don't know. I don't like that I have add quad and then I have add to game object. Well, it's adding. I suppose it's also kind of silly to just say mesh creator create, but okay, I like that better. Let's take the game object and pass that, and mesh creator create. That's fine. That's fine. I'm gonna stop debugging session. It's always bad luck. Bad Visual Studio luck to let the debugger run all night and then make a change and use that build system after it's been getting up to its evilness in the midnight hours. Okay, I get to delete my design notes because I've implemented all of them. Question is, oh, I didn't implement all of them. I still have to do this here. So I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this. Okay, so I'll leave that there for now. Let's build it. Even though I'll have to do a totally separate build for Unity. And it's the build that's performed without you doing anything, but it waits a long time to start. In fact, yep, there it is. So it's maybe on average something like 10 seconds for it to detect a file system change and kick off its own build. Thanks, Unity. Good chance that this will fail or crash. Let's save it. Well, a good chance it'll fail. A small chance it'll crash everything. I don't want to overstate my pessimism. Okay. If it worked the first time, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. No, it didn't work the first time. Well, console errors. Lots. Let's get a fresh one. Alright, so there's going to be some obvious errors. Get the obvious ones done first. So I passed in vertices. And there was nothing there yet, because I had not initiated this, or not constructed it. So here's where that inelegant C# syntax comes into play again. Where I have to say, with my long-ass generic declaration, make me a new thing of what I just said. Okay, waiting for the Unity build. Clear the console. Okay, so there's a number of error messages here. Index outside the bounds of the array. So that's not something I expected. I think this has gotten the point where I should run this in the debugger. Okay, so let's do the Unity build. Okay. So it's going to attempt the calculations. Segment vertices. Do you got stuff? You do. I'm sure it's good. This part didn't change at all. Let's see what Mesh Creator looks like. Triangles, vertices, 0, 0. All good. In we go. This calc cable vertices. That didn't change, but now I see my mistake. So I'm referencing into segment vertices, and what I really need to reference is cable vertices. Okay, got it. Play, errors, don't care. I'm gonna fix it. So the segment vertices, they define the arc, kind of the center point of the cable. That's what they are. But that's not what actually is used to make the mesh. The cable vertices are the points. Stop it! I don't want to update your bullshit. Are the points that are extruded out by a certain radius from the center point. Extrude's probably the wrong verb. Yay! Okay, back to baseline. Back to baseline. So next, man, I'm hungry. I'm so hungry right now. I'm so hungry right now. Okay, so cable decorator. Got this little section down here. It says I want to figure out a subcurve. Okay. This might be worth a little more design thought too. So let me just pull all the relevant variables right in front of my eyes so I can see them in one place. there's two parts to it. One is figuring out what the parameters of each subcurve are going to be. And what do I need for that? I need, well, I need start vertex. Basically, I need all this stuff. No. Yes, okay. So I need to, maybe like an array of these values. So probably a type, call it subcurve. It's going to have in it this stuff. Well, ultimately I want to be able to do two things with it. I want to, for each subcurve, so I don't know what's telling me. Okay, so for each subcurve I define by to subcurve count. If random number is lower than subcurve chance, continue to the next subcurve. Okay. Subcurve I for let's see, subcurve get XYZ on catenary for start and end points. Okay. So that in and of itself gets like an algorithm, but just say that I can do that. Okay. Find closest point vertex from main curve that is next to start and end. The start point Yeah, there's an easier way to do this. There's an easier way to do this. Okay. For each main curve vertex. Calc XZ plane distance from main curve start and end point. Okay, for each main curve vertex MV, calc XZ plane distance from main curve start. That's just Pythagorean theorem. Okay. If, let's call this D. If, okay. Calc start percent and end percent of subcurve. Okay, if I'll call this TD. If D divided by TD is less than SCS, continue to next main curve vertex. Okay, so at this point I know that I'm within the range of where a subcurve would be shown on the main curve. So I can say if subcurve work this is really, it's getting harder to write in algorithm form. Hasn't defined start segment XYZ, set it from MV else no, I don't need an else. Do I need an else? Maybe I do. Yeah, okay, I'll do an else so that I don't accidentally set the endpoint there at the same place as the start. So if D divided by T, D is greater than or equals SCE, then store segment store and segment XYZ and sub. Should be a little more consistent. Vertex and sub curve work. Continue to the next sub curve. Okay. So the output of all this is it's going to go in that subcurve type. What do I want to store there? In my subcurve type, I want start vertex, end vertex, and then that'll get stored from this first bit of calculation. The other stuff will get passed on to calc segment, not calc, create cable mesh. And this will be maybe more randomly defined or defined from properties. So for that you need slack height, segment lengths. No, the output of this should not be start vertex and end vertex. Because inside of here I want to keep going. Okay. Yeah, okay. What gets passed? Segment vertices. And keep it simple. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Start. And points. Okay. That's all of this. Still haven't defined what's in here, but it could just be like a structure that I keep on adding to with more calls. So it could start out just with start vertex and end vertex. So I could do private type subcurve. It must be getting late in the day. Vector 3. Start vertex, end vertex. Okay. The nice thing about calculating this is as soon as I'm done calculating these 2 points, After that, none of my calculations that follow need to reference the main curve. So it's just in here. Just in here. So what else do I need to pass here? This is vector 3, segment vertices. I need subcurve count. Let's make it static, my favorite kind. And I'll say right now, this has been a productive session, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this in one session. I think it might need to go into tomorrow too. Because math needs thinking through. Okay, subcurve count. Subcurve size, subcurve chance. Might be better to encapsulate this a little bit further. So above here, I had some calculations related to, let's see, curve start percent. Curve in percent. That means that I can have some controlling logic around which actual subcurves are requested here. So let me pull in this algorithm. I don't need to do that. These are throwaway values actually. So I could reserve this subcurve to be used to handle some other work. I could just pass back an array of vector 3s. Say the odd ones are starts and the end ones are ends, or the even ones are ends. Anyways, let me make sure I capture the algorithm correctly in here. This will be taken out. Okay, so I'm going to need like some kind of function to just Just good old a squared plus b squared. A plus, hello, yeah, okay. X. That's not notation that works. Okay. Okay, so that's one leg, and the other leg is Z. Okay, so that should be fine. 15 minutes to finish this, that's not enough time. Alright, let's leave that there because I feel pretty good about the algorithm. Let me just get the rest of the design done. So okay, so here I'll have a more top-level function. I'll follow my convention of putting callers after callees. Okay. I feel like this can return a vector 3, and that makes things a little bit simpler. This type here is going to change. It's going to change to supply everything needed for create cable mesh that isn't already here. So I want segment vertices, vector 3. Segment radius. Did I say it was randomizable? Let me check. No. So I don't need to store that. That can just be passed by the caller from properties. Vertices per ring should be the same. This adjustment stuff doesn't have to be set there. Okay. Okay. So a subcurve is just segment vertices. That's fine. And I don't need to be so parsimonious here. I can have this return subcurve endpoints. Or I'll say vector 3. Subcurve endpoints. Okay, getting close, getting close. So if this returns subcurves, then let's see, what do I have to pass to calc subcurve vertices? I need to pass segment vertices, vector 3, main curve, segment vertices. And then all the stuff that goes into generating the endpoints of the curves and the curve itself. So basically this stuff here, subcurve size, subcurve chance, and this is the time where my decision to make everything static makes me look like an asshole. Because look, all these parameters I'm passing. Wouldn't it just be simpler to get them from the class members? Wouldn't it? I am sticking to my way. I'm sticking to it. Okay, so that, then I feel like I do want the radius here, so let's go with float segment radius. Nah. Okay, so if I calculate the segment vertices, that means I should be ready to calculate the subcurve. I don't need to name them quite so verbosely here. We're already in the context of subcurves, so let's just make that a little bit more manageable. Oh, yeah, okay. So it's that. Oh, but here it is. What are you complaining about? Good complaint. I knew there was a reason I was using the typed language. Okay, so we've got the mesh creator gets created here, and I can say for each subcurve in good enough. Okay, and we got to make it all public, I think. Okay, I think that could do it. So let's say list subcurve. What? Did I not already add that? I guess I didn't. Okay. This I'm ready to delete. Done with that bit of scaffolding. Okay. So then, what was I doing? Yeah, okay. So we'll say, this gives us reproducible random or pseudo-random numbers. Okay, so if decor random So use that to maybe leave out some curves. Okay, then I have to figure out this part gets a little bit harder. I just want to keep going on this. But if I think about it, I'm not that close to finishing this. I've got all this stuff to write too. That'll take a while. So I'm going to copy down my notes on what's bugging me right at the moment. If size is a percent, how to determine the overlap amount. Actually, it might not be. The overlap. All right. Because I can't think of how to ask that question correctly, it betrays some vagueness or flaw in my thinking. So, sharpen your thought here. All right. I'm not ending on a victory point, but I am ending with confidence. I did here just to make it so that this compiles when I return new subcurve endpoints 0. Okay, so I did make some refactoring changes. I did plot out some design. I can truthfully say that I made progress, but it's not in the form of a visible change or feature to the game. Which makes me think, like, should I be stricter about that? Should I just always insist upon adding some feature or visible change to the game in each day of work? I don't know. I am like sensing like a small amount of guilt over not adding anything to this, just doing a little bit of refactoring, because that is in some ways a bit of a perilous way to go. You're always kind of tweaking code and not making actual changes that are important. Like, should I aim to have like faster momentum by doing smaller changes? But no, you know what? This is a friggin' 2-hour session. Many tasks do not get done in 2 hours. Most of mine have been able to show some visible change that was helpful. But you think about like taking apart and rebuilding your car engine. Your car is not working again until you put everything back together. Then after that, maybe it works a little bit better. But in the middle of it, no. It doesn't seem like you've made any progress at all. So I'm saying really obvious things now. And I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop the stream. And I welcome you to join me again tomorrow evening for God Killer live coding sessions. Stop in the stream, stop in the stream, stop in the stream.